The freedom of being up there in the air, you know. The wide open spaces and seeing the ground from the air. You never took it for granted. You were thrilled at every time.
During the war, Joy Lofthouse was one of just 168 female pilots who helped to keep our overstretched fighter squadrons going by ferrying planes across the country.
Other women certainly were envious of our job because all women were doing something during the war, and there we were flying aeroplanes, and they paid us for it too. And we were doing it, I should think, just about the most exciting job that there was to be done by women in the war. I flew a Barracuda, 2 Mustangs, an Oxford.
This book tells the story of Joy's remarkable time as a pilot in the Air Transport Auxiliary.
That was quite a good month.
Joy flew 18 different types of aircraft on hundreds of missions. She's now 92, but her flying started when she was just 18.
I saw a news item to say that ATA had run out of qualified pilots and were training people with no experience at all. And I thought that sounded better than working in a bank. I'd never even been in an aeroplane, and I didn't even drive a car. So I learned to fly before I could drive.
As war raged across Europe, the pressure to have fighter planes ready at the airfields grew rapidly, and pilots were in great demand.
The delivery of new aircraft from factories to operational centres is the responsibility of a vast organisation known as the Air Transport Auxiliary, with men of 14 different nationalities in its ranks. And also helping in this important work are several women.
You never knew from one day to the next where you were going. They would hand out the little bits of paper we called chitties. And then that was the exciting bit. Where are you going? What are you flying, you know? And they knew, of course, that we were all trying to fly as many types as possible.
There was one plane that was at the very top of any ATA girl's list.
Of course, I remember the first day I've ever flew a Spitfire, because that was the culmination of our training. And of course, it was quite the fastest thing you'd ever flown. But my big worry the first time I flew it was whether I'd lose the airfield. You're so busy looking at the cockpit, and then you shut the hood, and you're miles away by then because she's going so fast.
Joy also has a fondness for a more humble aeroplane, one that started the flying careers of so many pilots.
One of the first aircraft I ferried was a Tiger Moth, because we were barely through our training, and they suddenly had a whole gaggle of Tiger Moths to fly down to Wales. There was a little bit of banter, of course. See you there, Joy, if you get there, sort of business.
The ATA pilots often flew alone and with no navigation aids. The dangers were high. 173 aircrew died.
I suppose we lost perhaps a dozen women. Some of the accidents were weather, some were aircraft malfunction, you know. But none of my close friends were killed, no.
Joy's flat in Gloucestershire is a treasure trove of memorabilia from her flying days, the centrepiece being her uniform, still in pristine condition.
And the first time you wore it, of course, you were very proud. We had 2 hats. This is seemed to be the only one that survived. I don't know whether my head's got bigger, but it will just about go on for me.
After the war, the ATA was disbanded, and for most of these remarkable women, life was never quite the same again.
I missed flying dreadfully when we first stopped. I think I last flew in September 1945. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do the rest of my life? I'm never going to do anything as exciting as this again, and I was probably right.
For Joy, the years she spent as part of that unique service delivering planes to the front line will never leave her.
It was wonderful. There you were, up in the sky, and no one could talk to, nobody could say, come back, you're going the wrong way, or anything like that. I mean, it was such a wonderful job to be doing. You couldn't really better it, could you?
Well, earlier we heard the amazing story of Joy Lofthouse, who flew 18 different types of planes during the Second World War. Joy never lost her passion for flying, and what better way to celebrate the wonderful work she did than by reuniting her with one of her favourite planes. Today is a chance for Joy to turn back the clock. More than 70 years after she learned to fly, she's taking to the skies once again.
Well, it's a long time since I've been in a Tiger Moth, so part of me is looking forward to it, and part of me is wondering how I'll feel in the wide open spaces. But I'm very much looking forward to it, taking me back to my very, very early days of training.
Tiger Moths were the main training planes for ATA pilots. With an open cockpit and simple controls, they were the ideal plane to perfect flying skills. Today, Joy will fly in this one at White Waltham Airfield in Berkshire, her old training ground. Many of the buildings here are still as they were when the war ended, and for Joy, the memories are flooding back.
She looks quite small, although small, no smaller than a Spitfire, but somehow different. She would be different, wouldn't she? But it's so long since I flew in an open cockpit airfield. I hope I shall feel all right. And I've got to climb up on there. I think I can manage that, just about.
Tiger Moths were designed in the 1930s and stayed in service for more than 25 years. Now there are just a few remaining in the UK.
We would have used the height indicator, height we're flying at, and the speed, and that was about all we needed to know.
Flying with Joy, another woman of the sky, instructor Amanda Harrison.
I think she'll probably put me to shame. I think she will remember how to fly it perfectly, and it will be such an honour to take up Joy, my hero, and pass the controls over to her, and for her to feel the freedom of the Tiger Moth again. It'll be brilliant. Hello, Joy.
Hello. Oh, it's a lady pilot.
I'm a pilot today.
I hadn't realised that.
I have to say, I've wanted to fly an ATA lady.
Have you?
Yes,
oh, dear.
Absolutely. So this is a huge privilege for me.
I'm glad about that, yes.
So it's fabulous. And I brought my logbook, and I would be very privileged if you would sign my logbook.
All right, I'll sign your logbook for you. Yes. No charge.
No charge. After we've done the 3 circuits,
yeah,
we're then going to fly out,
yeah,
and then I'm going to hand it over to you and say you have control.
Well, not for long.
How's that?
That's okay.
Not since the 1940s has Joy done this.
Wow, lovely.
And there's no stopping her now.
Right, here we go. It'll all get quite noisy.
I wonder if people train to fly in a Moth. They're anxious to get on to the next type. Yes. This is pretty windy and noisy.
Yes.
1,000 feet above the Berkshire countryside, and it's Joy's chance to be a pilot again.
Joy, so are you ready to have control?
I have it, okay. But only going straight and level.
Straight and level.
I don't think I'm going to do anything fancy.
I'm glad.
Okay, yep. Just to say that I've done it.
Yes, absolutely. You have done it.
I don't think I'd like to do much of a turn. I may do something wrong. Okay, you have her.
I have control. Brilliant, Joy. Lovely.
That was lovely. A great thrill. If I was learning now, I'd be only too glad to pass and get on to something a little less noisy. Well, now, I'm not allowed to say what her landing was like. Sure, it was better than anything I could have done. I'd better say it was 8 out of 8, shall I? It was a great experience to be back in a Tiger Moth, yes. I wouldn't like to do it day after day after day at my age, but the experience of being back in an open cockpit aeroplane that I flew during the war, everybody wants to be reminded of when they were young. And of course, flying today does that for me, reminds me of when I was young.